Welcome, everyone, to our Citrus Research Exchange. I'm Bjorn Hartmann, Assistant Professor in EECS and also the Director of the Citrus Connected Communities Initiative. And as part of this initiative, we're really happy to bring our first Research Exchange speaker here to Berkeley. I'd like to welcome all our web viewers at the other Citrus campuses at Davis, Merced, and Santa Cruz. All of our Citrus Research Exchanges are online at our website, and if you want to receive emails about these talks ahead of time, send a note to Yvette, that's Yvette@citrus-uc.org, and she'll put you on our list. A couple of other quick announcements before we get started with our talk. The next application deadline for the Citrus Foundry is coming up at the end of this month, September 27th, so if you have a device-centric startup that you would like to pursue, apply to the Foundry. The website is citrusfoundry.org, all one word, no dashes. The 2015-2016 Big Ideas Contest is also open, and today is the first information session at 6:30 p.m. in B100 Blum Hall. That's at the plaza level, right across the street here. And deadline for pre-proposals for the Big Ideas Contest is November 12th. There's also a talk happening here tomorrow called Cell Phones and Your Health. That's on Thursday at noon here in Sutardja Hall in the Auditorium by Joel Moskowitz, the Director for the Center for Family and Community Health in the School of Public Health at UC Berkeley. Now for today's main event, we're very lucky to have Tess Posner with us. She's the Managing Director of SamaSchool, a social venture that prepares low-income people to succeed in the digital economy. And SamaSchool is part of the Sama Group, a really interesting group of companies that I know I've been tracking for the last 4 or 5 years or so. And I remember visiting them in San Francisco and Soma back when there were maybe 5 people in the office, or 10. I think there are a couple more now.
Yes.
And what's really impressed me always about the Sama Group Ventures was the coupling of a thorough understanding of digital labor and the digital economy. So forms of work that have become possible through crowdsourcing and online platforms, but having those coupled with a core social impact mission in all of the ventures. So Tess built and launched the first SamaSchool program in 2013, and as Managing Director, she oversees all departments, funding, and advisory partnerships, and leads geographic and programmatic expansion efforts. Prior to SamaSchool, she was the Assistant Director of Employment and Education at First Place for Youth, where she led the education and employment programs in 4 Bay Area counties. Before First Place, she managed education and literacy programs in underserved public schools in New York City. Her passion and expertise lies in creating employment and education programs that focus on empowerment and tangible outcomes for participants. Tess Posner.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Citrus for having me. I'm really excited to be here with all of you, both that are in the room and those that are here virtually. I also want to thank you for the cookies. They are amazing. I'm going to be talking to you today about the future of work, but why that matters for today. And I want to start out with a story from my background when I was working at an organization called First Place for Youth that was just mentioned. And this was the lightning bolt moment where I realized that the world of work was changing. This particular organization helps foster youth and homeless youth get into careers and jobs for the first time. And I want to tell you the story of Chris, who was an 18-year-old kid from Oakland. And Chris had never had a job. He had just finished his high school diploma. And we had a computer resource center where people would come in and they would apply for jobs and build their resumes. And every day, on time, I think it was 3 p.m. every day, Chris would come in and he would work on his resume, polish up his skills, do mock interviews, and he was really diligent and really smart. but he'd been bouncing around foster homes for his whole life, and he'd actually been homeless prior to coming to the program. And so he didn't have any work experience and not a lot of support around him. And he came in and he would apply to jobs at Target and Safeway and Home Depot, a lot of entry-level customer service jobs because he was really, really good with people. And after about 3 months, he wasn't getting any callbacks. And this was surprising to all of us that were working with him because he was so diligent and he showed up every day on time and he filled out all the applications correctly and everything was going right seemingly. And we had a program where we also partnered with employers to try to create opportunities for these young people coming from disadvantaged backgrounds. And so we called up Home Depot, Safeway, Walmart, and we asked them, we gave them some case studies and tried to understand what some of the barriers were that were facing the young people that we were working with. And we found out that a little known secret was that in order to qualify for an entry-level customer service job at any of these stores, you actually have to fill out a computer-based test, which Chris had been doing, but what we didn't know was that the test is timed. And so if you take longer than others, there's a certain cutoff point, you're automatically disqualified. So there's this barrier, and Chris in particular didn't have a computer at home. He, as I mentioned, bounced around to different foster homes, and so he didn't have the ability to really learn those skills, and so working on a computer was very new to him. And so unfortunately, he had to learn how to really speed up his ability to do those applications in order to get a job. Eventually he was successful, but it was a very high barrier. And it was at that moment that I realized that even to get a job at an entry-level customer service when you've never had a job before, basic computer skills were necessary, and not everybody had the ability to get those. So it's clear to me that the economy and what it takes to actually succeed or compete, even for the most basic jobs, is rapidly changing. And so we see a lot of these changes happening, and now they're even more clear than they were back then, years back. Forces like globalization, technology and the internet and rapid changes in technology, the recession, as well as changing demographics, which is happening all across the world, are really spurring some of the trends you see on the right. Remote or online work is becoming more popular, not only online freelancing, but also working remotely for a business or an employer. The economy is really dominated by rapid change, so the skills that you need today seem to change every day, and new types of jobs are popping up. Old types of jobs are going out of business. There's global competition now, where there didn't used to be because we're competing on a globalized scale. The gig economy is booming. I'll talk more about that. There's more fluid work arrangements, and again, it's dominated by rapid change, and that speed of change continues to increase. All of these changes means that what it means to have a career in today's world is different. So in the old economy, you could get a college degree, and that really meant that you could get a good middle-class job. You could work for that same employer, you could move up with that employer, or maybe in the same industry, if not the same employer, and then you could retire, and your working life would be over, and you'd transition to a different phase of life. Because of all of the world of work being disrupted by the forces that we talked about earlier, today's reality of a career is very different. The Wall Street Journal just reported that people on average change careers 7 times in their lifetime, when it used to be just 1. And so what we're seeing is that a college degree no longer is a way into a good job for your lifetime. You have to continuously update your skills. It's really dominated by life learning, and you may even have to start over in a totally different career from the beginning, even though you've advanced in one particular industry. You also continue to remain engaged past retirement age. Many more people, either from necessity or because they want to, continue to work past retirement. Another trend that's becoming dominating this new economy is freelancing. So in 1989, only 6% of the US population was freelancing. Today, it's about 1/3, and that represents 53 million people. By 2020, it's projected to be half of the workforce. That's half of everybody freelancing. We also see the growth of the on-demand economy thanks to smartphones, And there's this economist quote here talking about how the ubiquitous platform of the smartphone is going to challenge many of the fundamental assumptions of 20th century capitalism, from the nature of the firm itself to the structure of careers. And we see this as a $5 billion market today. It's growing 500% a year. How many of you have used Uber, Lyft, Caviar, TaskRabbit, Handy? The list goes on. And we are in Silicon Valley here in the Bay Area, and we see this explosion because all of these companies are popping up right around us. And it's crazy, crazy growth that we're seeing here. All of these changes and disruptions in the economy create a lot of new challenges for us to deal with, such as classification of a worker. You hear that a lot in the news regarding Uber and other types of on-demand services that are classifying workers as contractors instead of employees. That debate will continue to rage on. There's a lot of other challenges that this brings up, and a lot of uncertainty because this type of work is changing. We can't rely on the old models. However, this change also brings unprecedented opportunities that we've never seen before. So obviously with the internet, greater access to information, online work, and the ability to look up how to start a business online and learn that, access to capital, new ways to create jobs for yourself and for others and to earn income. Also, because we're changing careers 7 times in our lifetimes, you also have a greater chance of finding a meaningful job for yourself because you can make that switch. Lifelong learning, you can continue to update your skills, and you can collaborate. I myself, even within the context of Sama School, have hired people from all over the world to support our organization at an early stage and have collaborated. We have a team that's spread out across the globe, and it's only because of technology that makes it possible to connect with talent as well as employers and workers from all over. So one of these really exciting new opportunities that I want to touch upon is online work and the rapid growth of the digital economy. We see that millions of jobs are posted through online platforms, and really this was only possible a few years ago as the software became more advanced. Now it's safer than ever to actually, as an employer, post a job and find somebody to actually fulfill what that contractor job is because of the way that they do safe payments and verify identity. Whereas before, it was very unsafe to actually contract with somebody over the internet without those extra protections. So the types of jobs are varied. You can get an entry-level job, data entry, admin assistant, and things that are very advanced, such as computer programming. There are emerging trends like HR and law that are increasingly going online. And these are some of the platforms. Some of them we mentioned earlier are in the OnDemand Economy, and many of these represent marketplaces that are billions of dollars and have many different types of jobs available. This type of work is growing almost 20% faster than the non-online economy. And a recent McKinsey report just came out that said that online work is going to add $2.7 trillion to the global economy and enable over 500 million people to access work by 2025. It's not just online work that's creating huge opportunity. As we mentioned before about lifelong learning, you have the ability to learn constantly because of online education, which is a $100 billion market this year and continuing to grow. I'm sure many of you are familiar with some of these online education providers and probably have taken some classes yourselves. So all of these trends that we mentioned, the disruptions in the economy, the new opportunities that are provided, the fast-changing nature of skills and work are also enabling people to and requiring people to really have a new set of skills to succeed or even compete. And so some of them are listed here. Obviously, digital skills are really ubiquitous in terms of accessing almost any opportunity. Entrepreneurship. You need to learn how to market your skills and really come out there and understand what does it mean for me to be in this new economy. You no longer are employed by one company for 30 years, and so each time you have to learn how to market yourself fresh. Flexibility and adaptability. It can be very difficult to make those transitions, and so you have to cultivate that flexibility, and ability to jump around and learn new things quickly within yourself, as well as the learning, which we mentioned. So, and just to dig in a little bit more into the digital skills, 90% of jobs in the next year will require some form of ICT skills. STEM jobs continue to grow, science, technology, engineering, and math, and will account for almost 40% of all high-skilled jobs, which also tend to be the highest paying. So a lot of the good jobs are going to be in STEM. It's not just high-skilled jobs, though. We already see today that 6 million, or almost 80% of all jobs today, middle-skill jobs. Middle-skill jobs are those that don't require a college degree, already require those tech skills. And today, if we look at the state of who's looking for work and who's searching for work, 200 million people are unemployed across the globe. Without access to the internet and technology, it's very difficult to not only develop some of these skills that we've just talked about, but also to access some of these new opportunities that we talked about as well. So things like creating an email address, or even having an email address, learning how to search for something online, learning how to talk on Skype or other chat functions or applications, building a resume on Microsoft Word. These are things that we think are very simple and we take for granted, but you learn them automatically when you have access to the internet. And when you don't, you actually don't know how to do them. And believe it or not, we've seen many, many people in the United States who have never done these things on a computer, and so are left out of the opportunity to develop these skills and to access many of these new platforms. So certain groups are specifically left out of the ability to access these resources and take advantage of developing these new skill sets. Low-income people, as I just mentioned, that we've seen in our program, 50% of low-income households do not have access to the internet in the US today. Also, women tend to be disadvantaged as well, so 25% fewer women in the developing world have access to the internet, and it's even higher in sub-Saharan Africa. So in order to prevent some of these groups from being left out of being able to compete and succeed in the new economy, that's really why we started SAMA School. We believe that workforce development, job training, education really needs to update as an entire system to help prepare everyone for these new economies, but also make sure that some of these groups are not left behind. Our mission is to equip low-income people to succeed in the digital economy. We offer a couple of different models. So our oldest model is in-person training. So we run job training programs, we set up classrooms in low-income communities, we partner with local organizations like community colleges and nonprofit organizations, and we do grassroots marketing to find job seekers that are interested in getting into the digital economy or looking for new skills. We hire local instructors that provide coaching and mentoring to help students gain the skills required to succeed in the digital economy. We've just launched our first ever online certificate program that I'm going to be talking a little bit more about, but that's really available for anyone, anywhere with an internet connection all over the world. So currently our in-person programs are in the US, and we have a site in Arkansas, in the rural Delta area. We have 4 sites in California, one in San Francisco, one in Merced, hello UC Merced, East Palo Alto, and Quincy, California, which is way up north. And we also have a site in New York City and are continuing to expand there. We also launch internationally and then have 6 operating sites in East Africa in Nairobi, Kenya. So our model. We provide really 3 core things that we think prepare people for the digital economy. The first is marketable skills. So we do a lot of labor market analysis and try to understand what are the skills that people need, and we realize that that's constantly changing, so we've built an in-house functionality to be able to do that on a consistent basis. We also provide digital work readiness, which is a little bit different than traditional work readiness because it includes things like entrepreneurship and computer literacy and learning how to learn, and that lifelong learning piece that we talked about. We also provide access and exposure. So we do provide laptop scholarships for our students. Many of our students, so even we have a site in East Palo Alto. It's a mile from the Facebook campus, and a quarter of our students don't have any internet access at home or access to a smartphone. So we see this kind of disparity, and we try to close those gaps. We also provide free Wi-Fi to students who come into our classrooms and want to use that. We help connect our students to employers, and we also bring in volunteers from tech companies, both virtually and in person, to try to get that exposure to actual employers and understanding what it's like to work in the tech industry or even any industry. All of our students who graduate get certificates that they can put on their LinkedIn profiles or their online work profiles. On the left here is a picture of our recent graduation from Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco. And on the right, you'll see our first ever graduation in Nairobi, Kenya, in a classroom that is on the border of an informal settlement in Nairobi. So just to give you a little quick history, we're only about 2.5 years old, Sama School, and we started here as a pilot program in Bayview Hunters Point. Many of you here might be familiar with Bayview, but it has a poverty rate of nearly 40%. We piloted there in March of 2013, and we saw incredible early success. Over 65% of our students were getting jobs even before our 10-week job training program was over. We also saw huge demand from the community. We were having hundreds of people applying for only 30 slots. And so we decided, hey, there's something to this. We need to try to expand this. And that's when we moved into Merced, and we saw similar really exciting results in Merced, and so we moved out of the pilot phase. After that, we expanded out of state to our New York and Arkansas sites, and then we received funding to expand internationally into East Africa. This year, actually just 2 weeks ago, we launched our first ever online training to really try to scale our impact across the world and provide access to these skills and resources and information. We're preparing for further scale all across the US and in East Africa, as well as in New York City. We just received a grant to expand our reach there. Who we serve. So we serve mostly middle skill workers, so people that may have some college but don't have a college degree, which still to employers is an indicator of qualifications. And so we try to provide that credential and those skills in a short-term training boot camp to get people into the workforce. About 72% of our students come to us unemployed. The average length of unemployment is 16 months. So you're talking about people who have been out of the workforce for quite a while and have been unable to enter it for various reasons. We also work with primarily female students. So impact, 85% of our students see increases in skills through our 10-week model, and they see wages of $12.64 after graduation. We also see that if you compare the students who got jobs, their wages before after the program, we see almost a 30% increase in those hourly wages. In our international program, which we just launched in early 2015, it's 2015 now, we're seeing that almost 60% of students are getting jobs, and that's in our Nairobi, Kenya class. And I'm really excited to share with you our online class. So we launched this a couple of weeks ago, and we've seen really exciting demand. We've had almost 500 people already enroll in the last 2 weeks, and we're seeing them enroll from all across the globe. I wanted to include a couple of quotes because we ask, why do you want to take this class? And we're hearing some really interesting answers. So in the Philippines, one student said, I'm a single mom and I'm trying to find a job online where I can work and take care of her at the same time. I'm willing to learn. From the US, I know many people in the IT industry who are saying that remote work, especially with virtualization, is the way things are now going. And from Kenya, the world is changing every day, and therefore we have to be equipped with the skills and knowledge to be able to match to its needs. So we're seeing a real hunger from across the globe for these skills. This is a screenshot of our online platform. Our classes have quizzes and videos, and we have live classes that we offer to help support students with our instructors in case they need that extra support, and they can also request a personalized session with some of our instructors. Our goal is to enroll 10,000 people in this online certificate program in the next 6 months. We know that that's a really bold goal, but we also know that 200 million people are unemployed right now, and the need is great. our biggest challenge with reaching this goal is going to be getting the word out there. We're a pretty small team, not that new. We don't have a hugely known brand, and we definitely don't have a big marketing budget. So our biggest challenge is just going to be sharing this and spreading the word, and we're relying on a lot of our partners and communities to help us do that. I want to share the story of 3 people who have been successful as a result of Sama School and in the digital economy, and really inspire me to come to work every day. So Mary has a really interesting story. She was a truck driver in Merced. She's now retired, but she drove 1 million miles with no accidents. Unfortunately, because of health issues, she wasn't able to afford her basic expenses with her Social Security money. And so she came and joined our program and was also taking classes at Merced College. And Mary went through our 10-week program, and she really learned how to market herself and how to take her existing experience and incredible history of skills and really apply that to new marketplaces. So she got a job online for a company in Texas, consulting, and it's a trucking company. So she was able to apply her skills and her experience in this new economy. Kristin, also from Merced, is a single mom of 3, and Kristin was an administrative assistant. She had 10 years of experience in that field and was super motivated, so good with people, really energetic. Unfortunately, the company that she was working for had to downsize, and she lost her job, and she'd been looking for a job, so she joined our class. After she went through the class, she also learned how to apply her skills and market herself. She got a job working for a makeup company in New York City, and she now makes $4,000 a month doing this as a virtual assistant, so a similar type of job, but just virtual. And she's able to support herself and her kids, and now she actually gets requests from clients all over the country to support them, and she can't even take all the requests, so she doesn't have enough time in the day. So really amazing story. And then Stacey. Stacey is from our Arkansas class, and she used to work at an Exxon gas station, which was pretty far outside of her hometown, and so she had to spend a lot of money on gas to get there to and from work. And she only worked there part-time and had worked there for a couple of years and was unable to raise her wage. If you're not familiar with the Delta region or Arkansas, there's some pockets areas where there's just no job anywhere. And so online work is a huge opportunity for these communities. She was able to get an online customer service job and raised her wages by 25%, and now works at a level where she can sustain herself. She can also work from home and stay with her kids. So these 3 women are examples of how, with not that much training, not that much investment, only 10 weeks, you can market your existing skill sets in this new economy and really develop those core competencies to succeed in the new economy. We have a bold vision, as I mentioned before. We want to enroll 10,000 people in the next 6 months. We want to train and graduate 20,000 people in the next 3 years. We really believe that this can scale at a low cost and that millions of people can benefit from learning these new skills in the new economy. And so our vision is to provide these resources to people like Mary and Kristin and Stacey. So all of the trends that I mentioned, globalization, gig economy, freelancing, fast-changing nature of skills, the short half-life of skills that we're constantly going to need to be updating, it's really bringing a lot of new challenges and new uncertainties, and it does have the potential to exclude certain groups from being able to succeed, and many of them are already excluded. I don't believe that we're a victim to the future. I really believe that we have so much power to act now and be able to provide these skills and to ensure that people are not excluded from even having the opportunity to compete and to succeed in the new economy. And so I really hope all of you will join me in whatever way you can to help create a more equal and inclusive society for all of us, for the future of work and the future for our lives and our children's lives. There are 3 ways, if you're interested in getting involved with Sama School. You can share our story. As I mentioned, we're a small team with a small marketing budget, and we're trying to enroll 10,000 people. you may know someone that can benefit from these skills. Feel free to share with them the link or share our website on social media or our classes on social media. You can also volunteer. We're always looking for talented people like you all to help us out in many different ways, and there's many different opportunities, so feel free to contact me if you're interested in that. And here's our contact information. Again, I just want to thank all of you for having me here, and I'd love to open it up for some questions and have a dialogue and see what you think about the future of work. Thank you so much.
All right, let's open it up for questions. I'll bring the mic to you. Just raise your hand.
Okay. Hi. From your talk, it sounds like you're really addressing three groups. Two are kind of classical digital divide, one in the third world, one in impoverished areas of America. The third is the kind of the collapse of the middle class. People kind of falling off the bottom like the truck driver. I presume that was a middle class job before retirement, but this person's after retirement kind of falling off the bottom. Do you, this is really not a pointed question, I'm generally wondering, do all three of these share pretty much the same characteristics? Can you serve them all, or do you need to tell your program differently for each?
For each type of student?
From these three different, in kind of business speak, market segments. Do the needs of these three groups of individuals pretty much line up the same, at least insofar as you're able to bump them up?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think that what we see, we have for our in-person classes, we do a screening to make sure that we're taking in the right people and that they have time in their lives to invest to the class. We also do look for a level of basic skills because we don't start at zero. We look for people that, depending on, we offer different tracks. So for example, we offer like social media marketing track, and people can learn how to be a social media marketer online. We also offer a data services track. And so for each of those, it does come with some prerequisites, and we help students kind of assess where they're at and which one might be best for them. I think what we find in common among all of our students is that they have some kind of pre-existing drive. So they've been looking for work, they may have those barriers, but it's really an investment to learn new skills. And while we help tap into that investment and provide them with coaching and mentoring to really build their confidence, they do have to be willing to commit to that learning component. And so to answer your question, yes, we do have some prerequisites to make sure that across the board there's somewhat of an equal level so that we can serve them in the best way possible. And then we look for certain characteristics that we know will make them successful in completing the class.
How long do these different programs go on? So how many hours does it take?
That's a great question. So our different programs are different lengths. Our in-person, we call it our in-person boot camp in the US, is 10 weeks. And it's about 90 hours, 80 to 90 hours of content. So people can take it while they're working or while they're going to school or while they're taking care of kids, and it's meant to be flexible in that way. And our international programs are a little bit more accelerated, and so those are between 50 and 70 hours. The online class, we estimate that it would take you about 20 to 30 hours to complete all of the content there, and we're going to continue to add new content online, which may extend that out. It's a great question.
I noticed for the online class there was a fee of $50, and I'm wondering, like for people around the world, that's a vastly different sum of money. For someone that's making $2 an hour, that seems like a barrier to entry. So I'm wondering if you're going to offer like different rates or scholarships for people in other countries.
Great question. Yes, and just so everyone knows, the first 1,000 people to sign up are completely free, and we are looking to charge a fee because it helps cover our costs of developing the course and hosting it online, etc. However, we definitely realize that some groups can't afford that, and so we do get funding. We're also actively looking for corporate sponsors who can help us get scholarships for like a certain bundle of students that we can provide them in certain areas. And we've already received requests from groups all over the world that might be working with a group of students that can provide that scholarship. And really, this online class, it's a pilot as well. We've never done anything that's fully online. And so we're going to learn a lot. And if we find that that price range doesn't work, it's a test. And so just like any product, we'll be probably testing different ranges and making sure that it hits that sweet spot between not being a barrier, but also being able to help us be sustainable and ultimately, reach more people through that. It's a great question.
Just to follow up with that, I used to work for a startup in Nairobi that provided some similar services, and one of the major challenges to scaling was that problem of who can pay for this, and in a way that actually covers our full operational costs. So I'm curious, for your organization, how do you define social enterprise, and what's the goal in terms of long-term financial sustainability, where you want to be, and how you kind of envision that model working?
That's a great question. And I think, for any nonprofit organization or social business that wants to scale, that's a huge challenge, because your beneficiaries are always going to not necessarily be, have the ability to pay at the level that does cover your costs. So up until now, we've been supported solely by foundations and corporate sponsors. So JP Morgan Chase, the Tipping Point community, the Walmart Foundation, the MasterCard Foundation, and now the Robin Hood Foundation in New York are some of our supporters, among others. And because we're only 2.5 years old, we've been really thinking of that as like seed financing. And over time, we do want to build a couple of revenue streams. Charging students small fees is one of those ideas. We have a couple of other ideas that we are going to test out in the next year. And my goal would be for us to get to about 30% of cost coverage or so in about 3 years, which we think is reasonable given our size. It's just a matter of testing, what's a really viable way to really productize something that we already do. Because if we try to go outside of what we already do in our core competency and our mission and try to create something that's valuable to the market way over here, we think that that could cause mission drift. And so how do we really productize what we already do? And student fees is one of those. And we'll be announcing a couple more in the next year or so to see what's viable. But it's a challenge for sure.
Thanks. 2 questions. First question, could you speak a little bit about your initial benchmarks and goals when you set out to do this endeavor, which is great. And second question, how does your program here in the U.S. fit with the existing government resources for unemployment and training centers that are available?
That's a great question. So when we started in early 2013, we were looking at a couple of things. That first and foremost, we were looking at how many students were able to get jobs as a result of the program, as well as the amount of income that they were able to earn, as well as like program completion, so how many people graduate and get a certificate, things like that. But definitely the most important metric for us was how many people are actually able to get a job. And we were seeing like 60 to 65% before the 10 weeks were even over. And so we thought, wow, these are, we're taking people that may never have used a computer and getting them to do online work in 10 weeks. There's something really exciting here. And so that's why we were able to continue to get investment and really grow it out and scale it very, very quickly. Your second question is a great one. And we actually partner a lot with the local workforce systems. When we first started doing this, and really still today, I might be wrong about this because I don't know what's going on across the entire country, but there really was nothing out there that provided training for people to get into online or digital work. And so it's a real opportunity as well as gap that we were able to come in there and fill. And as a result, we've gotten a ton of interest from workforce centers, governments, as well as community-based organizations and community colleges to provide this as more of a supplemental resource. And our scaling model is actually one where we look to partner with local workforce centers, local community colleges, community-based organizations, and actually run it as a train-the-trainer model. So we would train an instructor, let's say, who teaches computer skills at a local Workforce One or America's Job Centers. and actually make them a certified Sama School instructor that would teach our curriculum, and we'd provide ongoing curriculum updates and impact measurement and support to that instructor, but they would actually run and implement that. And we think that that's an easy and cheap way to really scale this out, because there are so many programs that are doing really incredible things in the community. Some are outdated, some are doing really cool things, and we think that this is a great kind of supplementary resource that can easily be plugged into what's already going on. And we've tested that out already in 2 locations, and it's worked very well. Great question.
New forms of work also can involve new forms of vulnerability for the labor force, either the general vulnerability of disruption, just pulling their job away, or outright exploitation in terms of avoiding minimum wage, going into a complete piecework with declining rates environment. Do you have any insights into new forms of vulnerability of laborers in your target labor source market, and what can be done about that?
Great question, and it's one that we think and talk about a lot. Yes, I think that, the way that the labor market is being disrupted, the rise of freelancing, the rise of the gig economy, the fast-changing nature of how technology is disrupting types of jobs, and there's really pretty intense debate going out there about, is technology creating or destroying jobs, and what kind of future are we going into? And we definitely, the way that we're participating in that is saying, well, we're seeing these trends are happening now, and how can we prepare people for that? So as an example, we try to, with online work, there are safe platforms that you can go through, and you know that, for example, you're going to get paid for the work that you do. And we train our students to identify scams and identify situations where they would not be protected, because there are so many scammers out there that say, I'm sure you all have seen, work from home, make $10,000 a day. And so there's a lot of risk. And we help people. We don't believe that that risk is going to go away. We think that that risk will just continue to increase or stay the same. And so people really need to know how to navigate and keep themselves safe. So we talk about internet safety, we talk about scams, we talked about protecting themselves. The other piece is around benefits for contractors. And that's a big debate that's going on right now, is really, because as a contractor you don't get certain benefits that come as an employee, what does that mean for you? And so we connect people with resources like the Freelancers Union, other types of resources that are popping up. Ultimately, it's a policy issue, and there's a lot of debate happening, like, is this type of work going away or is it here to stay? Do we need to create a new worker classification? And ultimately, we're not going to be the ones to decide that, but we want to help prepare people and give them the most up-to-date resources and information so that they can thrive, hopefully, not just survive, in whatever changes are coming. And we like to connect with the thought leaders in this space and really understand what's happening at the cutting edge of some of these policy questions that I believe are going to define definitely the next election and the next period of workers' rights. Great question.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the broader Sama enterprise, and I know that you're related to SamaSource, and I wondered if you wanted to say a few words about the other aspects of the organization that you work with.
Absolutely. Great. So we are Sama School is one of the programs or ventures in the Sama Group, which is a collection of social enterprises that help provide access to work and healthcare. And so SamaSource, some of you may have heard of SamaSource, and they've been around since 2008. And they connect poor women and youth in developing countries to work via the internet. And they actually do something called impact sourcing, where they connect big work and projects from big companies, clean up messy data projects for companies like Google or Getty Images. And they actually source that work and provide it to people that would otherwise never have the opportunity to get those types of jobs. People that have never had a formal work experience are now doing work for Google mostly in East Africa, India, and Haiti is where SamaSource exists, and they've actually helped over 7,000 people get employed since they started. The third enterprise, so SamaSource, Sama School, which started in 2013, is Sama Hope, which started in 2012, and they fund doctors who serve very, very poor communities around the world, and they do crowdfunding and use technology to help provide much, much needed resources to these doctors. So it's really, all of these enterprises really help leverage technology and market forces to help provide access, to help people live with dignity and ultimately fulfill their potential.
So Tess, I was thinking about sort of the misalignment between what employers or HR departments look for in terms of skills and what people actually have, and with the skills that people actually need to succeed in that paid employment once they get it. And you know, there was this recent article in the New Yorker, for example, that a lot of people are asking for college degrees even though the actual job doesn't require a college degree. They're just asking because they can get it. And it helps to sort of, you know, make it easier for HR departments to sort of screen candidates. So do you think at some level you're really providing as much of a link up between employers and people who have these soft skills or you know, would otherwise be qualified to do the work versus, you know, and you're basically finding diamonds in the rough for them, as opposed to, you know, is it about the specific skills or is it about sort of the people who come in and go through the program?
Great question. So I think two things I have to say about that, and I think that the college degree, it definitely still is that signal, and it does make it easier for people to screen out applicants. I think that that's going to change over time, and what's popping up, you'll see, is this idea of like portable credentials, or digital credentials that people are getting from, you know, shorter term trainings. You see this in the rise of like tech coding boot camps, where people without a college degree are going through a 12-week boot camp program, and they know how to code, and they can get an $80,000 a year job. And you see that Code Academy, Dev Boot Camp, and there are many others out there that are cropping up actually across the country. And we actually are sort of a version of that, but for non-technical jobs, because not everybody has the ability to code, especially people that are coming without any computer experience at all. And so we focus on occupations, non-coding occupations, but still with that boot camp model. And we try to validate the certificate. One of our biggest learnings in the past few years is actually that we really do need partnerships with employers. So we've, to date, partnered very closely with online work platforms themselves to understand trends in the market, and we've consulted with employers. But now we really believe we need those deeper partnerships to help do what you're saying, which is validate our certificate and say this is meaningful in the marketplace for people without that college degree. And so, yes, I think that in some ways we have to, you know, if we're comparing one of our students who may be just as talented, just as skilled as somebody else with a college degree, it's so much harder for them to get that job. And so we believe that, you know, until we make our certificate really meaningful and have that brand associated with it where it's meaningful to employers, we'd like to provide some of those connections through partnering with employers, and we think that that'll help give students a leg up. Also, you know, some college degrees don't provide skills like learning how to learn or entrepreneurship, and so in some ways our students could have an advantage by knowing how to market themselves in this new economy, whereas unfortunately a lot of colleges don't prepare people in that way. It's a great question.
Two questions. The first part is, out of that cohort that graduated in 2014, I was just curious what proportion found work in online environments versus physical real world. And then second, I find SamaSource's model very interesting, and especially in a follow-on to your answer to this previous question. Just curious about the decisions that you made as a team to pursue training bootcamp model versus a sourcing house similar to SamaSource or employer partnerships like you've just described. Thanks.
Great question. So trying to remember back to 2013, I believe that the majority got online work. We do track, some people do get, you know, traditional jobs because of the skills that we provide, and there were a couple of those in that first cohort. I don't remember off the top of my head, but definitely the majority was online because that's really the hypothesis we were trying to validate. And secondly, that is a fantastic question about the sourcing. And when I joined before Sama School existed, really came on board to start the program and was talking with the SamaSource team and really understanding what they had done, because there are a lot of learnings and expertise that I could draw from that to develop the model. And at that time, I was looking at the labor market and these there's lots of different words for it, onshoring or online outsourcing in the US. The wages just weren't there to support the program at scale, and what we were seeing is people becoming online freelancers, working independently. So in the SamaSource model, people are actually working in work centers, and they're going into work every day just like you would in a traditional job, but they're doing work online, and they're working for a client that is here in the US. And so this is more of a distributed freelancing model, and that's what we're seeing grow here. There is now some interesting examples of work centers that do, for example, customer service is one of those that people are now bringing back from being offshored and now are doing here in the US. Call center work and things like that. There's also QA is one that is also growing. And so we're definitely looking at that, and we still try to stay abreast of really we're trying to build a model around what the labor market is doing. So if that explodes, we'll definitely consider what opportunities might be available. But at the time, it was just not supporting that. So it's a great question.
Well, thank you for all your excellent questions for this Q&A, and let's thank Tess Posner again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.